I want you to take a second and just look closely at the clothes you are wearing right now. Like pick a seam or maybe a sleeve or just the hem of your shirt.
Yeah, really look at it. Have you ever actually stopped to think about where it came from?
Right. And not just the store you bought it from, but, the actual hands that made it. We are living in this fast fashion era where these massive corporations just churn out millions of incredibly cheap garments every single day.
Millions of them. It's wild. And it keeps us completely disconnected from the reality of global supply chains. But right now, there is this quiet, I guess you'd call it a profound rebellion happening in the apparel industry.
Which is exactly what we're getting into today. We're doing a deep dive into a really fascinating document we found called Ethical Manufacturing, How Small Labels Manage Production.
It is a phenomenal look at the industry. Because historically, I mean, the industry has basically trained us, the consumer, not to ask too many questions about our clothes,
Yeah, we
really.
just want it fast, we want it cheap, and we definitely don't want to think about the logistics.
Exactly. But this growing cohort of tiny independent fashion labels, they are taking on those corporate Goliaths. They're completely rejecting the fast fashion model. And honestly, against all odds, they aren't just surviving, they are thriving by fundamentally reinventing how apparel is actually made.
So today's mission for this deep dive is to shortcut your way to understanding exactly how these small labels are pulling off um, this massive logistical feat, especially since they're operating on these totally shoestring budgets.
Right, they don't have billions of dollars to throw around.
Exactly. We are going to explore how they navigate those obstacles, and more importantly, why their approach is creating a blueprint that, might actually force the entire fashion industry to change.
To really understand the mechanics of this, we have to define what ethical manufacturing actually looks like on the ground. Because, I mean, it gets thrown around as a marketing buzzword all the time.
Oh, totally. Greenwashing is everywhere.
Right. But in practice, according to the source, it is a rigorous, holistic operating system. It demands that you prioritize both people and the planet at every single touch point.
So we're talking about what? Guaranteed fair wages, strictly enforced safe working conditions, that kind of.
All of that, plus sustainable material sourcing that doesn't just, deplete local environments. And the big one is absolute, undeniable supply chain transparency. Like, a brand has to know the exact origin of literally every thread, button, and dye.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because on the surface, this heavily curated approach, it sounds a lot like the farm-to-table movement, but for your closet.
I love that comparison. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, like knowing exactly which local farm grew your heirloom tomatoes, except here you know exactly which facility milled your organic cotton. It's highly intentional, and let's be honest, it usually comes with a premium price tag.
It does. The curation aspect is a great parallel, but what's fascinating here is that the business application goes way deeper. For these independent labels, ethical manufacturing is way more than just some noble crusade or a premium gimmick.
Right.
It is a critical survival strategy. Think about it. If you are a small brand, you literally cannot compete with a fast fashion giant on price. You will lose every single time.
So you had to compete on trust.
Exactly. Modern consumers are incredibly savvy now. They aggressively research brands before they open their wallets. So by offering radical transparency, a small label establishes this bedrock of credibility that a massive, opaque corporation just simply cannot replicate.
That makes total sense,
Yeah.
because you can't fake transparency. I mean,
Yeah.
you either show the receipts of your supply chain or you don't.
Right. You can't just hide behind a slick ad campaign anymore.
Yeah, and in a wildly crowded fashion marketplace, that commitment gives a customer a definitive reason to choose you over some generic alternative.
Precisely. It creates real brand differentiation. And furthermore, by rigorously reducing waste and operating with high efficiency, which, ethical manufacturing inherently requires, these brands are actually building stronger, more resilient business models. They aren't over-leveraged on massive amounts of cheap inventory.
Okay, wait, I have to challenge that a bit. I totally get the loyalty aspect,
Yeah.
but loyalty doesn't pay a factory upfront for an initial production run.
Well, no, that's true.
Right, like if you're a startup with limited capital, you do not have the volume to demand those big wholesale discounts. You are voluntarily choosing the most expensive, most complicated way to make a t-shirt.
Well,
So how do they actually afford to play the game on hard mode?
It requires a completely different economic calculation. So traditional fast fashion, they operate on a volume model. They might only sell, I don't know, maybe 60% of what they produce at full price.
Wow, just 60.
Yeah, and then they discount the rest, or honestly, they literally throw it away. Their margins are built on exploiting incredibly cheap labor and materials to just absorb all that waste.
That is wild.
But ethical brands, they operate closer to like a 95% sell-through rate. Because they produce in much smaller batches and target a highly engaged community, almost everything they make actually gets sold.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, when consumers feel that buying a jacket is essentially casting a vote for the kind of world they want to live in, they become fierce brand evangelists. And that community loyalty is what creates this protective financial moat around the startup.
So that naturally brings us to the actual operational puzzle. If they are completely rejecting the traditional volume model, they can't just call up some mega factory overseas and order 100,000
No,
units.
definitely not. They'd be laughed off the phone.
Right. So they have to physically build a completely different supply chain from scratch.
Right.
How are the clothes actually physically getting made?
They heavily rely on the strategy of small batch and localized production. While a giant brand uses these factories designed to just churn out endless identical items, small labels deliberately seek out independent, small batch manufacturing facilities.
And doing that completely flips the traditional power dynamic. I mean, when you produce in smaller batches, your quality control is significantly higher.
Oh, absolutely.
You aren't just mass-producing mistakes at the speed of light. Plus, like you mentioned, you drastically lower excess inventory. You aren't sitting on thousands of unsold garments. It also shrinks the turnaround time and, significantly cuts down the carbon footprint from global shipping.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the most vital shift is how it transforms the relationship between the brand and the manufacturer. In the traditional fast fashion model, brands are notoriously ruthless. They practice something called vendor hopping.
Right, it's just this relentless race to the bottom. Like, if Factory A in one country says they can make a shirt for $2, and Factory B in another country offers to make it for $1.97.
The corporate brand immediately jumps ship just to save those 3 pennies per unit.
Exactly. And we have to look at the human cost of those 3 pennies. To offer that discount, Factory B has to find the money somewhere, right?
Yes, and that is usually where safety corners get cut. They turn off the air conditioning, they skip the fire safety inspections, or they just force unpaid overtime.
It's awful.
It is. Small ethical labels reject vendor hopping entirely. They prioritize stability. They build these long-term, multi-year relationships with trusted suppliers, ensuring that the factory actually has the financial predictability required to pay its workers a living wage.
And choosing local or at least highly vetted, smaller scale manufacturing, that seems like it solves the visibility problem too. Because if you're producing closer to home, you can physically just get in your car and visit the facility.
That physical proximity is invaluable. It means the founders of these labels aren't just relying on some PDF certificate of compliance emailed from a continent away.
Right, which could totally be forged or outdated.
Exactly. They can routinely walk the factory floor, talk to the garment workers, and verify the conditions with their own eyes. It bridges this massive disconnect that usually exists between the designer and the maker.
So we've established the who and the where. But the what is equally important here. You can't build an ethically manufactured garment out of toxic, heavily polluting materials.
No, you definitely can.
The textiles themselves have to clear an incredibly high bar.
They do, and material sourcing is where these brands get incredibly innovative. The foundational building blocks look very different from conventional fashion. Organic cotton, for example, is a major pillar.
Because conventional cotton is super harsh on the environment.
Extremely. It is heavily reliant on toxic pesticides and requires just an exorbitant amount of water to grow. Organic cotton farming, on the other hand, utilizes natural crop rotation and significantly less water, which preserves the local soil health.
And then there is the fascinating world of recycled fabrics. We aren't just talking about like reusing old t-shirts. These brands are using regenerated fibers and recycled polyester.
It's incredible technology.
I looked into how this works, and it's brilliant. They take existing plastic waste like discarded water bottles that would otherwise just sit in the landfill for 500 years. They melt them down, extrude them into these ultrafine threads, and weave them into incredibly durable apparel.
Yeah, and it completely removes the need to drill for new oil just to create virgin synthetic fabrics.
You also see a big resurgence in ancient natural fibers, right?
Oh, definitely. Hemp and linen are incredibly popular in ethical manufacturing because they are naturally resilient crops. I mean, they require almost no pesticides, very little water, and their overall environmental impact is just a fraction of conventional textiles.
Here is where it gets really interesting, though. There's another material strategy these small brands use called dead stock. And when I read about this in the source material, I immediately thought of like a massive, opulent corporate banquet.
Okay, I like where this is going.
So imagine a giant corporation hosts this huge dinner. They order way too much food just to be safe. And at the end of the night, there are piles of incredible, untouched premium ingredients just sitting there, literally destined for the dumpster.
Right.
Now imagine a small, nimble boutique chef coming in the back door, rescuing those unused ingredients and turning them into a highly coveted, limited edition gourmet menu.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize dead stock. I mean, in the fashion industry, massive corporations order hundreds of thousands of yards of fabric at a time. And they always overorder because running out of fabric mid-production is a total logistical disaster.
So they just hoard it.
Pretty much. You end up with 5,000 yards of premium